Well, that was awesome. I think you may, if you heard two pianos, that was because I had another tab up. I do love doing these completely live. I will probably have to record them at other times in the future, but I actually kind of like the completely live sometimes, even when it's a little bit messy. Yes, I do actually stream like the channel overviews, the other little videos and stuff as I go. So it's a work in progress, but it actually harkens back to my earlier experience as a tech geek doing video things when I was making a little bit of bank in university, like as a poor, starving college student, which was a very long time ago. So, oh, like some other channels, do I need to warn you about the ASMR? If anyone has misophonia, blank yourself out right now for the the loud drink. Don't do it near your mic. Um, if aspartame is going to kill me, I'm okay with it. That's how I'm going to go then. Considering I have about 6,000 different initials for all kinds of things that they try to describe chronic illness and chronic differences and things like that. So I actually was not feeling well, and I'm still not feeling well, but I actually kind of shoved myself up and went, you know, what better time is it actually than to do a short stream not feeling well, especially this one. I think if it had been at a different one, I probably would have just rescheduled until I was well, but um yeah, this one I scheduled the topic why work doesn't work and kind of went, yeah, actually maybe I'll get on anyways and do that. So I see that there's a couple people hanging out, so it'll be nice to have you if you're in and out. Um, I wanted to kind of say that work is one of those things that is exceedingly frustrated for most people with neurodiversities and with chronic illnesses. And sometimes I wonder if, like, they're not the same pile, but some chronic illnesses, especially those that are genetic, um, and especially those that run in the uh, genetic spectrum of what they're coming to be called RCCX. I don't know if that's the genetic stuff's really new on that, so I'm going to just put that in big quotes as kind of like a name for it. But they are coming to believe and think that it's very possible that autism, ADHD, Ehlers-Danlos, queerness, especially non-binaryism, but also trans, especially orientations, different orientations of sexuality, but even gender itself are very much related to this kind of thing. And it strikes me as somebody who has always identified as cis, has always identified, you know, my gender um, uh, and my gender representation match, you know, my assigned gender, they match together. And my orientation has always been pretty not irritating to deal with, kind of thing, you know, it's been fairly relaxed in my life. And I still have had this really interesting experience of almost being like a duality. Um, I don't want to take the words, and here we are discussing new words, right? So, yeah, let's debate the individual words that we choose. But there's a certain, I call it transitory, meaning like both a doubling or a changing from one to the other, a duality. Um, I like the second spirit is an indigenous term in Canada for someone who has a particular gendered view of the world through that scope. And I don't want to take that word, but every once in a while I come off of it, and I think um, like two brained or two eyed, And they talk about two-eyed seeing in the indigenous communities. And so I've kind of grabbed that. I kind of feel like my brain sees things two-eyed, left and right, if you want to call it that. And so I think ND plus and chronic illness plus are kind of, they're starting to run together in my genetic scope, especially as someone who previously studied neurobiology and things like that, and neurocognition. So I'll say my little spiel and my little disclaimer so that people know who I am on the repeat. My name is Maria, and I am Little Miss Diagnosed. I have been Miss, Missed, and Ms. Diagnosed for 30 years. I've been put through the ringer, but luckily had a fantastic family that has always stood by me and were the ones that didn't gaslight me. Unfortunately, the medical community, many educational systems and teachers have lit my experience, and the world simply didn't have words. And unfortunately, when we don't have words in our North American culture, what we do is shut down the person who has more to say until they no longer have anything to say. So I'm here to say the things. And what I want to talk about a little bit today is why work doesn't work for people with chronic illnesses and neurodiversities. And I think they're pretty well the same thing here. Almost everybody I've ever talked to who is even considers themselves to be healthy, but who especially late identifies as with a neurodiversity. So they come to be diagnosed or they come to self-identify with a different neurotype later in life, especially women, especially those who've been pushed to the side, especially those who've had to find their way around degrees and studying and education and children and primary work. And we've already been asked to be flexible enough to get around those things. And that's actually worked for a lot of people. A lot of female presenting parents I know have actually, it's been really nice that they've had flexibility when they were partnered, or if they were partnered, that they've been able to do education and do other work and have flexed with being with children. A lot of neurodiversities, especially attention types, are really good at moving from new to new things and jumping around and checking in. And I love that. It's actually a superpower. But I definitely have heard the tale, and it's my own as well, of um, having that burst of manic energy at the beginning of a workplace, having all the skills to do things that other people do, but not having the endurance to push through what society and especially capitalist industry expects of you. And the answer I always get back for accommodations for those with disability is, oh, well, we have accommodations now. You should tell people. And I find that answer to be bullshit because I have spoken up as somebody who was with the Office for Persons with Disabilities at my university from the time I was 19 or something. I was very open. My family was always very open. That was the problem. I spoke up too much. I was always talking about it, and therefore I was complaining. I thought that this would change when I got older and I was better at communication, and so were other people. And the truth is that it wasn't much easier. It hasn't been much easier. There has been a reason why my mental health has taken a hit in almost every career choice, industry choice, job thing I've ever chosen to do. I'm competent in retail, but I can't do 8-hour shifts on my feet. Well, if you work in beauty or in fashion, you really should be able-bodied. Well, because that's what the job demands, right? Yeah, but the accommodations aren't really physically there even for if you could do it. They don't want you to be seen looking like that, and it's a really subtle thing because it's not like anybody overtly thinks that, it's just that what pops up into people's emotional brains first is, "Oh my gosh, how is this gonna get done?" And then the logic, brain takes over and makes up excuses. And that's the problem with being under any kind of structure that is systemic like that. Our society structures aren't things that we choose, but they become things that we think. Um, and we don't even realize we're thinking them. And deconstructing your own mind is half of it. So, gaslighting yourself about work is something that I'm starting to take on, which is that I still struggle very, very much with the fact that I am more than competent at what I do. In fact, I excel at what I do. I am somebody who has become all of those things you see on the top cards because not because I'm one of those 60 percenters or 80 percenters who sort of does lots of stuff and flits through life. And even if I was, who gives a crap? What if I did that? What if I did different things during my life? Is that somehow not as successful as doing one thing? Computers do one thing. Why should people do one thing? But even if we say that's the case, I actually do things at the top of my game. I have, and yeah, the world does not like pushy, annoying people who like to say that they know they're good at something. Oh, I can tell you all the crap I'm bad at. But when it comes to teaching, I get through to students. I get through to students that other classroom teachers do not get through to. I'm the one who stands there and gets those kids understanding what's going on. I'm the one who has no plagiarism in a college course because I'm on those sides. I sit around for 3 extra hours and teach them a different course that I also know how to teach. I'm good at what I do. When I was a birth doula, I was good at what I did. I had things ready for the person 20 minutes before they knew they'd need it. I would have midwives and OBs regularly go, "How did you know that's what they'd ask for next?" And I go, "To me, it's obvious." It was like stage production. It was like running backstage of a play and just knowing what came next. You gotta have the prop ready. Something breaks, you go around the back. And that's what I do when I teach. That's what I do when I was a birth doula and when I was a lactation educator and supporter. And that's what I do when I teach. I have stories that connect these things to the real world. I have examples that work both for non-linear brains and for those that need absolute one-to-one. And I give a shit about people, and that's why I made a good counselor. I could read people's faces. I could read the pain they were dealing with. I could read what was going on, and I had different language that would say, "It looks like you're dealing with this," or "It sounds like your partner's missing this." And people go, "How do you know that?" And I swear, I like to joke that, you know, I like to joke. Bad joke from my dad. There's 2 kinds of psychics, those that know they're lying and those that don't. Um, Alexa, stop. She's playing some music for me at 6 o'clock to keep me going. Except, that'll get you copyright strike, right? Alexa, stop. We can't go and play regular music, can we? The music on here is actually by a good friend and my wonderful best person ever, Luke Culberson. He's a local composer who has been composing singer-songwriter type piano music and small arrangements. And I had the pleasure of using some of them with personal permission. So I hope nobody copyright strikes it. I've got his link down there as well. Writes beautiful lullabies and things like that. My kids went to sleep to his lullabies when they were young. It was hard, it still is, to know that I'm fantastic at what I do. I actually do it way better than other people. I fight all night and all day to talk to my students. I used to do 90-minute appointments as my standard, not to make more money. In fact, I charged less. I was one of the only counselors in the area that had a rate for people with disabilities that was under $50 an hour. When's the last time you heard of a therapist who charged less than 100? So quite the opposite of being someone who was doing it for the money and who is brash and bold and stuck up. I'm quite the opposite. I know I'm good at what I do because I know the details that go into it. I know the hard work of being there and thinking fast on your feet and moving fast on your feet. And then I know what happens when you can't move on your feet anymore. Our society does not want people who are good at what they do. We do not want people to be good at their work. We want them to be consistent. We want them to be available. We want them to be schedulable, and we want them to show up. We want them to do the same thing their whole life because that means we don't have to retrain them. We don't have to make sure they're not irreplaceable. We can slot in someone else just like them. And who does that and what does that? That's the system. That's the system we live under. We can no longer get paid in barter or fried chicken. I used to joke that when I was birth doula, if someone would show up with dinner for the next 6 months, I would do the whole thing for free, quote unquote. But as much as money is simply only supposed to be a system of exchange, well, I'll just give you little slips of paper. It's so much tied to who's in charge and who gets to decide, not how much the slips of paper are worth, but who gives you the slips of paper and whether or not you're allowed to get the slips of paper. Hiring and firing for jobs is nuts. We are always fighting. We are always hustling. I came onto YouTube again finally after a long time away being a different creator and being mostly in the private sphere as an educator and as a counselor and as a private practitioner because, dude, it doesn't matter how good you are at your job if you're not consistent, if you're not gonna do it every day until you die. And if we can't hire you from your resume that says the exact same title, or at most a checklist of keywords, instead, we're just gonna use AI to determine which keywords are in your resume, right? That's not AI. You know why? Because I was an early practitioner in AI. That stuff ain't AI. It's just what's called expert systems. It just plays chess. It's just large databases. It's not actually intelligent yet. It's actually not a network where you put information in and you don't know what you're going to get out because the thing learns something over time. And so each time it responds is a little different. No, these ones are one to one. You can see just because they're working with huge amounts of data doesn't mean it's not an algorithm. These are just big algorithm. They're not artificial intelligence. And here's the thing, we're so interested in artificial intelligence that we don't even give a shit about the people who built artificial intelligence. I cared about artificial intelligence when I was an undergrad and grad student at university. I was building some of the very first ones. I hand coded a Lisp recursive Lisp neural network as one of my major projects. I built a small piece of software that instead of going in loops that were regular loops, it would just transverse around a thing recursively. It would go down and look in it. Its recursion is kind of like going, hey, there's an index in the book. It says I should look this up in a dictionary. And then you go up into the dictionary and it says you should go look this up in an encyclopedia. And then you go to the encyclopedia and it says you should go look this up in an index. And then you work your way out. It's a long path. It's like a choose your own adventure book, basically. And this thing played games and stuff, and you didn't know what you were going to get. It was true artificial intelligence. We were working on these old systems, the press one that understood speech. Think about how many different ways somebody says one, 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 when, when. I'm from New York, I'm gonna say it different than if I'm from, if I'm from the wherever, if I'm from the South, if I'm going around, if I'm from Minnesota, if I'm doing the whatever. It's yeah, it's not just as simple as saying everybody pronounce the word the same way, right? That mess is exactly what people don't want us to do. I was recently told that I was overstating my abilities, my overrepresenting my background by saying that I had a background in universal design, in design for learning, in user interface, and in artificial intelligence because I hadn't had that on my resume. And I don't just mean on my resume, I mean as my job title. Even though I was one of the earlier creators of it. All we care about is job titles so that you can be replaced. And even if you don't hold such a negative view as me, because I'm somebody who's been an entrepreneur, I always loved making a business, making a brand, getting people excited, getting people connected. So I definitely have a capitalist, crunchy coding. But on the inside, as somebody with a disability, I am seeing rapidly and brutally how much it slurps people in and sucks them out and spits them out dry. And the first people who get spit out are often females, often neurodiverse, the ones who have mental breakdowns that we can make their fault, the ones who have not accommodatable illnesses. I thought I worked at a great organization before. And that when I said that my production and performance were dropping, that when I told them, yeah, it's because I was dealing with a massive illness that they knew about, but that was in flare. So it was now worse for a chunk of time. And that what I was doing was rescheduling with another instructor. Right out there in the open. I was being nice. I was actually, I'd say that day, is someone want to swap with me? I'm not feeling great today. Uh, But me doing that at all, more than like say once in 10 years, was all of a sudden a performance issue. And if I wasn't killing myself editing documents and getting them out like in an hour or two, which I mean, I can do once in a while. And then some days, even just because I'm tired, I can't do it as well, right? Time isn't linear. You can't do the same amount of things in the same hour every single time because you're not a machine. So the first people to go are those with chronic illnesses because they look normal and then they fail, and we blame it on us. The next people to go are those with neurodiversities. They last a little longer because they can just go up and down on this kind of bounce of trying really hard and then being put under too much stress and their brains falling apart, and they either get a different job or they uh, fall apart and then come back from stress leaves, and then they do it all again. And then they hit slightly older or whatever, and they fall apart. It kind of intrigued me a while back. Why, even though disability rights and different ways of learning neurotypes were actually talked about more openly, I think, in North America than they were before gay rights and queer rights of all kind. But I feel like, having been to Toronto Pride, I'm in Ontario, Canada, near Toronto. When we went there in the summer, I felt like, hey, this might be the first year where there aren't protesters and this place is rocking and it is mainstream. And it's starting to feel like, hey, maybe this is integratable as a normal thing, which it is, to just have around. But it made me wonder, why did it get up to steam as normal in our society before neurotypes and before disabilities really being integrated? And then it kind of hit me. And this might be a very dire view of it, but hey, they're healthier. They have more time on their hands. And that might be really pessimistic, and I'm simplifying a lot of social structures and saying that it's okay in my area when it is obviously not fucking okay in a lot of nightclubs in the States. So your mileage may vary, but around where I live, it's hard to have a rally of people who are disabled because a good portion of them are going to be sick. When the pandemic hit, I didn't have quite the same response as other people did. It was kind of weird. I wasn't anxious in the same way people were. One, I realized I had medical training. I had a house full of literal operating room, birth pool, birth cleanup things. I had gloves, I had masks. Oh, yeah, this is easy. But it was more than that. It was more than just previous skill. When I get to tell my story later, and I'll tell the whole story at some point, but suffice it to say, I haven't walked out the door since I was 14 years old without expecting to die of a virus. And when March 2020 hit, I realized, wait a minute, do y'all not go out your door thinking you might die today of the next virus? Oh, wait, you don't. So if it was about skill, then work would work for people who are more intelligent, who actually put things together creatively, who could connect the dots between stuff, who could see with two eyes or two brains or a transitive experience, who could literally 30 years ago say, well, if we're going to do stuff with computers, then language, linguistics, psychology, and computer science are all going to have to stick together in a big triangle. And I had professors sign pieces of paper in triplicate with pens so that I could take these courses. And everyone said, why don't you just focus on one thing? You're not picking one thing in your life. You're not deciding. You're just one of those people that is a jack of all trade, master of none. I recently had a young CEO, good kid, and he's not wrong. He said, when I see people say that they know 80% of lots of things, those are usually the people that don't know 50% of anything. And I went, yeah, but you're missing when someone fucking really knows 90% of everything. And there is a shitload I don't know. But in my scope, there's a reason why people call me Mrs. Google before it existed. When it was brand new. That was a joke they had because I used to do that. People would say you're a walking search engine before Google existed. Why? Because I can't add numbers together, but I can remember everything I've ever done since I was a little kid because my neurodiversity is an eidetic memory. I have it's not quite a photographic memory like I think my dad had, but I have what is horribly called a highly superior. Highly superior just means where it is on the chart. It just means it's above 95 or 90%. It's just, one of those grids. It's like the 99th percentile, the 95th percentile. This one's superior. This is high superior. It's just bullshit. But when you say it, it's like incompetent cervix. I'm on highly superior. I just like to say nearly perfect or nearly photographic. There aren't good words because we don't like to say things like that. I don't know. You find some words for me. I need some. But I have a nearly complete video memory of everything I've done since the age of 5. And I mean nearly everything. I remember what I wore to the first day of kindergarten. Oh, well, that's not that hard. Everybody remembers the first day. I know what I wore the 5th to last day of kindergarten because the week was like I only had this chance to wear these things. Things from years ago are as clear as what you had for breakfast is in your head. The day I met all my best friends, every single one, whether it was 3 years ago, 6 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, I remember them exactly the same. Nothing fades. I'm not trying to be a dick. I can be, I'm sure. I'm not trying to be. I just remember it the same way you remember what you ate for breakfast. And if you have a little video of it in your head of like, oh yeah, I had eggs and the toast and that was the plate, that is what 30 years ago at university feels like to me. It's the weirdest thing, huh? So if we hired people who were good at stuff, we would hire professors who knew everything and were good teachers, I guess. We would hire people to write curriculum who gave a crap about it. But what happens when you get sick for a while? Well, the first thing that gets yelled at you is that you've been unproductive. And when I heard that word on the page recently, my brain went to hell. There it is again. Everyone assumes that if I don't produce something, it's because I'm goofing off. I've been in the hospital for most of the last while. I've been in and out of the ER dozens of times. I have spent entire weeks in bed. I've worked from bed. I told my doctor that I needed some more pain support when I realized that I hadn't bought anything in the last 6 months that wasn't to support pain. I started to think that buying compression socks was like my disposable income. And I had a mental crisis the day I realized that if I became disabled, I would become poor in a single stroke. And I have been fighting for years to come back from a resume gap of having kids. I fought my way through to working on my master's completion and taking another one. I overshot. I worked on becoming a professor again. I worked on opening a business. I opened and closed a business because of health. I lost everybody who was near and dear to me because of health. I destroyed my body because of health. I gained 100 pounds many times. I've lost that 100 pounds many times. And still I'm sick. A good chunk of the time. And when I'm up, I'm up. And I have everything to give. And I think that this is really similar to an ADHD experience that a lot of my friends have talked about to me. That first blush, you can do anything for a month or 2 or 6 or 8 or 1 or 6 months or 6 weeks or 6 days or something. And then you start to drown, and it's about production. And instead of truly, truly accommodating people, meaning I don't give a shit how much you do per hour. I want you to do the things that you do better in 1 hour than other people do in 8. And I keep striving to figure those things out so that I can hide, when I am sick, because I produce as much in an hour as other people do in 8 hours, so that no one knows I was lying down. But there comes a point that I realize that all I'm doing is working and lying down. And I don't mean in some bullshit way like you're going, well, everybody fuck you. No, I mean literally. I mean literally only going from bed to this chair. Do not give me everybody's a little autistic. Do not give me everybody's a little OCD. Nuh-uh. If you haven't seen what it's really like to give a lecture from the bathroom floor after puking. Puking once? No. Losing everything in your body for hours and still getting on a Zoom call with the video off and teaching 2 hours. I've fought for the last how many years to get back in the game. I thought I was actually making the acceleration work for me, catching up. And actually starting to enjoy the things that I was no longer doing, because I started to be able to say no, and I started to be able to not people please as much. And as someone who used to do triathlon when I could, yeah, people who are fat and lazy don't start doing triathlon at the age of 35. Thanks to the allergist who finally said, "No, you're sick. You're not fat and lazy, you're sick and gaining weight." One of the first medical practitioners who didn't gaslight me. No, thank you to the respirologist who said, "You can't have Ehlers-Danlos because you don't cross your hand over from here to here with your thumb." Yeah, without doing a history of whether or not I've had thumb surgery or not. Or whether I already have the arthritis type signs where things start to lock and decay. I can no longer fold my finger. I wasn't joking when I said that I'm an 80-year-old grumpy old man inside of a young woman's body. That's why I chose to call this MissDiagnosis. I'm not a Miss, I'm not a Mrs. either, but I'm firmly a Ms. or a ma'am. I'm older than I look because one of the only benefits, but also a bit of a Benjamin Button bullshit, is that some people with Ehlers-Danlos don't find out till later because they don't get any wrinkles because of the collagen disorder. Now, I've never been diagnosed, and I'm not diagnosing you. I'm not a medical practitioner. Anything I say is just my opinion. But I'm 20 years older than you think I am when I said, yeah, 50 years ago. Not quite, but yeah, close enough. And when I said I was doing AI in the early days, yeah, it's because I went to university in the 90s. And people don't think that I weigh as much as I do or that I am as old as I am. And I go, why would I lie? Why would I lie up? Why would I lie about being younger when I could lie, oh, yes, why wouldn't I lie younger than older? Why would I lie fatter than, unless I was telling you the truth so that you would stop hearing what society wants you to hear about age and wrinkles. And I would take 1,000 wrinkles for being able to move my finger again and be able to play instruments the way I used to and be able to type as well as I could before. And work doesn't work for people who are capable, but who are not able. Because work is about production. It's not about being good at what you do. I have a lot more thoughts than that, but I feel gross and sweaty because I'm allergic to air some days. And so I'm literally clammy, even though it's like freezer temperature in here. I'm sweating just because I'm having an allergic attack to something. So I'm going to go find more liquid that isn't aspartame and maybe some salts to bring my dizziness under control and hug my children because they haven't seen me in a week because they just see me lying down or leaving for the ER. I used to go to the hospital to help other people. And now some days I can hardly think about how I'm gonna get to the hospital because I'm too sick to get there, and that getting there is going to make me sick because I can't sleep in that place with the dinging and the lights and the 24-hour schedule. And so we have burnout. Nurses burn out, and doctors burn out, and teachers burn out, and those with neurodiversities burn out, and those with disabilities burn out first. And you don't even know because a lot of us are hiding it. Because our self-esteem is so tied up with being productive instead of capable. Because ability isn't the same as able. I want to thank the people who have popped in and out today. And I want to thank the people who are going to be on replay crew. And I look forward to talking to you, whether it's a podcast or whether there's someone here to chat with. It's all good because it's nice to get this stuff down. And it's nice to know that someone will hear new words eventually. It's worth it, even just to my previous self and to myself right now, who still worries about these things about work and keeping my house and keeping my credit cards paid because I'm a single mom. And what happens if I can't work? Take care of yourselves. We'll talk soon.